let me go ahead and start the timer. Hello? Yeah, Doug? Doug's out. I think Scotland just fell into the sea. Well, the first podcast was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I'm pretty sure no one was listening to it. There was a few people because I put it out there on social media, so people were picking it up. But it was basically me reading news stories related to CRM that I had found online. And there were two problems with that. One, they weren't interesting because CRM news stories hardly ever are. And two, it was just me. It was just me basically reading these. And they didn't have, there weren't enough stories every week to do it weekly. There just wasn't enough information, especially in the winter. I could barely do it once a month because there just wasn't any archaeology going on, so there weren't any news stories going on. And then I kind of took a break from it. It looks like it's trying to reconnect him, but yeah. Well, let's kick this off when he comes back too. I want to get this going. And I decided through social media I was going to try to contact other people, see if they were interested in having like a panel style show and where we all talk about different things and it's not just me the whole time. So I sent requests out to about 10, 15 different people that are on social media that I also know are in CRM archaeology, and I wanted people that were they had been in it for a while, that were in more leadership positions, more project manager type positions, so they'd have a wealth of experience to sort of draw from. And a number of them responded favorably and said, yeah, they'd more than happy be doing it. So every 2 weeks now, I contact all of them and say who can make it to the next recording, because schedules vary, and that's why I wanted so many people on. And we try to have 4 or 5 people on every show, and we do something different every 2 weeks. So we record it at 10 a.m. on Saturday, unless we have an interview or something like that. Then we do it on the interviewee's schedule. So if you happen to be looking at the Evernote, I've got some suggested topics in there. But if you're not, I'll sort of lead us through it. We're going to start with a couple, well, at least one comment from Twitter that I got this morning. And I know Steven's tired of hearing about this because I heard his opinions on it at the SAA. But this girl, I asked if anybody had any comments or questions, and she said, "How does it or did it feel meeting people you only knew digitally?" I think that's a good question to ask, especially on a podcast. We just try to come up with something we haven't talked about before, or if it's something that we have talked about before, but we said, well, maybe we need to branch out in this direction. I keep everything written down in Evernote in a notebook, and the topics we've covered. And then as we're doing the show, sometimes we'll come up with other stuff and say, oh, we need to have a show about that. And I'll write that down and then move it over. So usually about a week beforehand, unless we have an interview scheduled, about a week beforehand, I'll start emailing everybody and saying, okay, think about topics and think about whether or not you can make it to the recording. And then it just kind of develops from there over the next 5 or 6 days. And then by the time we get to so, all right, you guys pick up that conversation either after the show or if we have time, we could talk about during. But we never have time. So I want to get this recording going, especially since Russell's got to leave early and everybody's got schedules. So, all right. What I wanted was a more educational and helpful resource for CRM archaeologists, because I feel like we don't have enough resources for either people new in the field or people who are experienced in the field that might want to know about something else, or we all learn from the experience of others, everything we do. So having 4, 5, or 6 people on the show that have all had experience across the country doing different types of archaeology in different regions, we're not all Great Basin archaeologists or something like that. We're all over the place. And we've all been doing it for different periods of time too. And we have different educational backgrounds, and I feel like between all of us, we should be able to come up with enough options for various experiences that somebody can learn from that and then not repeat our mistakes. So I think the more general audience goes to some of the other podcasts, but our podcasts, I know we do tend to get comments from from some people that don't seem to be archaeologists. Well, that's the nice thing about Google. If I title the show and put the right keywords in for the metadata for the show, then people can Google different things and find them. And some people just like Googling the word archaeology, and they end up finding it. And actually, that reminds me, there's a gentleman who found our podcast that way. He actually found one of our panelists' blog and then found the podcast. And he ended up, he was between things. He had sold an insurance business and kind of made a bunch of money on it. And this was just a couple months ago, actually. He made a bunch of money on it, and then he's traveling around the United States by himself, visiting national parks. And he went through Arizona to talk to one of our panelists, Bill, because he'd met him. He got to know him through the podcast and through his blog, and wanted to know about getting into CRM archaeology. And then Bill put him in touch with me, and we had just interviewed a professor at Central Washington University that has a resource program up there, a cultural resource program. And we put him in touch with each other, with the professor at the university and with this gentleman who has a communications degree. He used to be like a cameraman and other stuff for news stations up in the Seattle area. Yeah, and he's done it, and he got out of that and started an insurance business with his ex-girlfriend, and then they sold that, and now he's single again, I think, and was traveling around. So he thought CRM archaeology sounded like a really fun thing to do. We tried to sway him otherwise, but he still wants to do it. So we put him in touch with that professor, and now he's gone to meet the professor. He's doing their field school this summer, and he's probably going to be starting their grad program in the fall if he can swing it. So that's one way somebody that generally wasn't an archaeologist and wasn't interested in archaeology found our show, got something out of it, and now is probably going to grad school for archaeology. Let me go ahead and start the timer, and then I'll bring you guys in, we'll say hi, and then we'll get going. All right, joining me today are Bill in Arizona, Doug in Scotland, Russell in Washington, and Stephen and Ruckus in Wisconsin. I haven't heard Ruckus too much. I've only heard him just once, but I'm sure we'll get a performance later. Hello and welcome to the CRM Archaeology Podcast, episode 33 for May 5th, 2014. I'm your host, Chris Webster. On today's...
Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. All the usual social media links are in the description. And don't forget to leave comments in the comment section below because feedback is always appreciated. I even read it on occasion, so feel free to leave anything you like. Thanks for watching.